Welcome. My name is Maggie Gallagher, as some of you know, but honestly, we have a whole bunch of new people joining us, and we're so very glad to have you. Please mute yourself if you're not a panelist. If you're a panelist, you know who you are, because otherwise your face will flash on the screen, and you'll be interrupting someone. So you know how Zoom works by this time. My name is Maggie Gallagher. I am the executive director of the Benedict XVI Institute for Sacred Music and Divine Worship. Our primary mission, founded by Archbishop Cordileone, is more beautiful and reverent liturgy and energizing a Catholic culture of the arts. But during COVID, when we, like everyone else, launched on Zoom, we somewhat accidentally helped found a Chesterton school in the Bay Area, the newly founded Chesterton St. James Academy. So tonight is a historic occasion in that we are trying to see that if what we did once, we can do again, at which point we have a heck of a pilot project. And so you may not know, some of you are on our list and we'd love to have you subscribe. The connection for us is truth, beauty, and goodness, and the Archbishop, honestly, because I sat on his couch this was just before COVID, in his home. And he said to me, there are two institutions that form souls capable of withstanding the acid bath of the culture we're in and the worst that is yet to come. And he said, one is the traditional Latin Mass, and the other is classical liberal Catholic education. And so I went to the board and said, can we add helping classical liberal schools to our mission? So we plan on doing a series of Zoom events. This is the second one, how to start a school, the Chesterton model. I think the next one, I'm going to bring on my all things guru, Kevin Kakvinsky, and make the topic fundraising 101 for Catholic schools, because I think he has a lot of good thoughts that would be helpful to many. And if you have ideas for what you'd like to see for these kind of meetings, we want to build a community and we want to be practically helpful to it. So you can either hit reply to the email that you got to register, or because that goes right to me, or you can put it in the chat box. And I would also like to ask all of you, since our not so secret goal is to actually help start one or more Catholic schools. What we've done is digitally marketed broadly on this topic to attract people who are interested. Our next step will be to go back and see, are there geographic clusters? Because that's kind of what I did in the last, that was helpful. I just happened to notice in the conversations we had afterwards in a social half hour, which we'll do again today, that there were quite a few people on what we call the peninsula who were looking for a high school. And that is my short version of how somebody else did all the work. I just held a Zoom meeting and did some digital marketing, but there is a school that probably would not have been there. Well, God can do whatever he wants, but would not have been there this fall if we hadn't done it. So that's a long way of saying, if you don't mind in the chat box, putting your zip code and or the name of the largest city close to you, that would be extremely helpful to us in identifying. I mean, I've already been going through the registrants, and I can tell we have some people near Rice Lake, Wisconsin, and we have there was several other potential clusters. So anyway, I will get out of the way so we can do what we came here for. And thank you. I see people are putting it in the chat box. That's really great. Derek, do you mind putting up the Chesterton prayer? And perhaps Dale Alquist, you could lead us in the Chesterton prayer tonight.
Certainly. Can you see that, Dale?
I sure can. I also have a card with me.
Okay.
But I'll be happy to lead. Why don't you just pray along silently so that we don't have a lot of echoes. But let's begin in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our Father, you filled the life of your servant Gilbert Keith Chesterton with a sense of wonder and joy and gave him a faith which was the foundation of his ceaseless work, a charity towards all men, particularly his opponents, and a hope which sprang from his lifelong gratitude for the gift of human life. May his innocence and his laughter, his constancy in fighting for the Christian faith in a world losing belief, his lifelong devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and his love for all men, especially for the poor, bring cheerfulness to those in despair, conviction and warmth to lukewarm believers, and the knowledge of God to those without faith. We beg you to grant the favors we ask through his intercession, and especially for the growth and revival of Catholic classical learning in the United States, so that his holiness may be recognized by all, and the church may proclaim him blessed. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Dale, it's such a pleasure to be with you, even by Zoom. And I'm wondering, since this is how to start a Catholic school, the Chesterton model, maybe you can start by telling us how you figured out how to start a school back in, what was it, 12 years ago, maybe?
It's 15 years ago, unbelievably. Thanks, Maggie. Yeah, so we our first Chesterton Academy started in the Twin Cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis 15 years ago. It was a couple of parents, myself and another gentleman from my home parish, who needed a place to send our own children to high school. And there were three things that we were looking for. We were looking for a very faithfully Catholic school. We wanted a good integrated classical curriculum, and we wanted a school that was affordable. Three things. There were other schools that could offer one of those, maybe two of them, but in most cases, none of them. And we decided, well, let's just start our own school. How hard can it be? And our school opened in the fall of 2008 with just 10 students, 10 of the most miserable kids you've ever seen. And wondering how their parents could possibly make them such guinea pigs in a project like this. But the fact is that it was the kids at the other school who were the guinea pigs. Our schools are cursed with exposing children to new educational ideas, new philosophies. In fact, G.K. Chesterton prophesied back in 1910 when he said the problem in the schools today is that children are exposed to educational philosophies that are younger than they are. That continues to be the problem. And we knew that there were some very tried and true educational methods that were simply have been abandoned. And so we brought back a very classical model with the great books, with a very integrated curriculum. So we were teaching the 4 years of philosophy, which is simply, there's no philosophy being taught in high school. But we start the kids off with Plato their freshman year. They're reading Aristotle their sophomore year. They're reading Thomas Aquinas their junior year. And a solid theology program that is connected to a historical timeline, so that when they're studying history, they're studying the story of salvation. When they're studying literature, they're studying the retelling of the story of salvation. When they're studying art and science together, they are studying the mind of God, because God has made us creators, and creation is the most beautiful work of art. So science and art should be connected, whereas the modern world has separated the arts and the sciences, so they're not even on speaking terms with each other. And everything is connected to the incarnation. The incarnation informs every subject that we teach. It's not simply a theology class that is taught separately from everything else. Theology is present in every classroom. We teach Latin because it is the foundation of our own language, but it is also a way of teaching orderly thought. Students who study Latin do well in math. It's an amazing phenomenon. And the day is centered on the Eucharist with daily mass. And we have a pro-life charism. The motto of Chesterton Academy is Cultura Vitae. So our kids are active in pro-life activities as well. And something that everyone finds when they walk through the hallways of our schools is they hear laughter. It's all about Catholic joy. It is absolutely the antidote to what's happening in education everywhere else. And so we started our own school, and people started coming to us saying, we want to do the same thing that you're doing. And so we were able to box up the curriculum, and also just as importantly as the curriculum are the templates on what you need to have to run a school. And this was the essential thing why parents could come to us from around the country, and we gave them the tools they needed to start their own school.
So let me stop a minute, Dale, because the one part that I find very intriguing about your curriculum is your theater program, because every student is in it. And this has somewhat required you, Dale, to become a playwright, because they need plays with great content, good stories, well told, that also have very large casts.
Yes. Well, it's amazing. There, yeah, we do make drama a requirement. All the sophomores put on their own play, the juniors put on a play, and the seniors put on a play. It's requirements. It's a class. It's not an extracurricular activity. My wife, who runs the drama department at the school and who also runs the drama department at our home, she says that drama is the most Christian of all the arts, because it's about dying to yourself and rising again as a new creature that this other author has created you to be. And it's about the body of Christ, where everyone works together to accomplish something. So every role, every part of the body is important. If one part suffers, the whole body suffers. And it really is literally making the word into flesh. A theater is an art form that involves the audience, so the audience is part of the creative act. It's watching a film is a passive act, but watching a play is a creative and active participation.
Okay, so Dale, yes, and it's also historically true that the Catholic Church founded theater really, and particularly in convents and monasteries, and the townspeople used to come for some great entertainment. Are you currently working on a play, or what have you done kind of recently?
Yeah,
Give us a couple of your titles. And do the other schools then put them on, or is it mostly in Minneapolis?
So we've created an organization called lepantomedia.com. My son, who is a graduate of the school, has created this to make the plays available to other schools. And we have, I think, probably well over 50 plays available for other schools to put on. But yeah, I just wrote our sophomore play is usually a light comedy to introduce children to theater, and then the junior play is a heavy religious drama. And I wrote the most recent play that our juniors just completed a couple weeks ago, Nuns and Ghosts. That was the name of the play. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm telling you.
Well, I was out there like a decade ago, and I think I saw Come Rack, Come Ruin.
Yeah, Come Rack, Come Rope. We did Robert Hugh Benson's novel. We adapted it for the stage, and it was a marvel.
Striking.
Yeah,
There's this great moment. There's this great moment where, like all the priests are being arrested and they're hiding, and you can't go to mass anymore. And one of the characters says, "It's a terrible time to be a Catholic." And the priest turns and says, "No, by contrary, it is a glorious time to be Catholic."
That's right.
Very much right. Dale's mark there. Yeah.
There we go. And then we do Shakespeare our senior year. So
good.
So the arts are very important.
I know your time is limited because I could talk to you for 2 hours about this and I think everyone would like it, but I want to tell me, do you know, and I'm sorry Emily's not on because I know she would know, how many schools have you founded now through the Chesterton
Yeah.
Schools Network?
So currently there are 46 Chesterton academies around the US. There's some in Canada. There's a couple across the Atlantic Ocean as well. There are 16 new schools going to be opening this fall. So we'll have over 60 schools operating, and there's at least 14 or 15 slated to open in the fall of 2024. So we'll have close to 75 schools in 2 years, and new schools are in the process of getting started all the time, and they're spread all across the country right now. But we do have this interesting little concentration in the Bay Area. The first school was started in Dixon, California, just outside of Sacramento about 4 or 5 years ago. But in the last year now, we've got the one in Sacramento. There's one in Yuba City. There's the one in Menlo Park, St. James. And so there's already 5 schools in the area, and there's talk about more. But
Well, Father Ilo just called me up and said, I hear you're doing this thing, A Star of the Sea. And you know, we're going to be starting a Chesterton Academy in downtown San Francisco at Star of the Sea, and probably partnering with St. James. So could you put in the chat, are you capable of putting in the chat box if someone wants to start a school on the Chesterton model? Can we put that contact info in for everyone? And if for any reason you can email me and I'll put you in touch. But it's a very nice segue because we wanted to bring on some of the parents who have founded schools. And Dale, maybe, you know, I recently had lunch with someone from the Cardinal Newman Society, a great group and a great guy. And we were talking about how to start a Catholic school. And he says, what I tell people is, first, you got to raise $1 million. And
yes.
well, I mean, I think for most on the existing models, that probably is true. And of course, it never hurts to have $1 million in the bank.
Never hurts, but it's not necessary.
That model tends to lead to schools being founded by very wealthy men, of which I know a number of good ones. There's one in Minneapolis, Providence, and Frank Hanna helped start a school in Atlanta. And James Martin is working on starting a school in the Denver, Colorado area. I don't know where he is in that. And if you're in that category, it's like you do a capital campaign and you buy a building. But what's brilliant about what you perceived is that a school is not a building, right? What's the difference in your model between what is the school compared to the way most people think about schools?
Yeah, first of all, because of demographics, there are a lot of empty school buildings all across the United States. They're just there to be had. They're old public school buildings, church schools that have been abandoned because they don't have a school there anymore. And it somehow connected to contraception and abortion. That's why a lot of these schools are empty. And so there's space to be had. No one needs to start by building a school. So you don't need $1 million. What you need to raise is money to hire your opening staff, and then supplement that with volunteers to get the school started. The parents are really in control. And so
that's the difference, I think. The other thing he said is your headmaster. And I understand in the Chesterton model, though, of course, a headmaster, a principal, head of school is an important hiring position, that some of these schools have to go through several headmasters. And it is, in fact, the core stable group of parents who are leading the creation of the school, which causes the school to continue to be and to exist. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's an absolute very fair statement, because the parents are the ones who are invested. And, you know, our school is for parents. It's not for the students, it's for the parents. We are there truly in loco parentis. We are helping them educate their students, but they have to be partners and they have to be invested. It can't be this passive understanding. I'm dropping my child off in the morning and I'll pick him up at the end of the day. No, the parents need to be involved, and that's why these schools are so successful, because they have the force of parents helping run the school. And yet, they have to follow the model. The schools that haven't followed the model that we created, they have failed. There's Chesterton campuses that have failed because they've gone off the tracks. We have a model that works, and because of the network now, everybody can support each other. But you can start a school for a lot less than $1 million. It takes $100,000 to $200,000 to open a school, and the growth comes naturally after that.
So we have some good questions from Juan. Accreditation, ? Archdiocesan approval, ? Who is spiritual formation entrusted to?
Great, thank
Can you
you.
speak to that?
Accreditation, we are actually creating our own accreditation program right now. Accreditation is one of those things that everybody asks about when you're starting a school. Nobody asks about it after a school is established. It's one of those, and it's impossible to have a school accredited when you open it. It's just simply impossible. You have to start the school, establish yourself, and then you get accredited. So it's you are acting on faith. You're getting out of the boat and walking on water when you start a school. You won't have any accreditation at the beginning, but you can get that afterwards. And we are now creating our own system where if they're Chesterton Schools Network, we will be able to accredit them. Archdiocesan approval, it's great when you have it, but it's not impossible if you don't have it. You can, and more bishops are loving and welcoming us and inviting us to start schools in
Well,
there.
let's pause a minute. So you started without Archdiocesan approval formally, and the vicar did not believe there should be independent at that time. This was many years ago. It should not be independent Catholic schools. They wanted all the schools under diocesan control. And as I understand it, what happened was that I don't know if there was a new bishop or not, but probably not. I think it was after they realized like your third vocation was coming from this tiny little school that kind of came to you and said, well, maybe you are a Catholic school and maybe we should be friends.
That's a pretty close description of what happened. We started under the radar. We did not have archdiocesan approval, but we were open with the archdiocese about what we were doing. They respected us as Catholic gentlemen running the school, but they said, we can't help you. You're not Catholic. And we just kept our heads down. We didn't cause any trouble. We didn't start by criticizing the other schools or criticizing the archbishop. But yes, after our 5th graduate entered seminary, they came to us and they said, how can we make you an officially Catholic school? We've now
I love that.
We've had 18 young men go into seminary from our school.
Well,
one out of 8 of our graduates goes into seminary.
That is amazing. Wow. A record to be proud of. But I also, in Catholic teaching, the parents are in fact the primary educators. So
Amen. If
you think of it as a homeschooling co-op, it's, and the parents are very involved. The authorities and the bishop hasn't formally objected to you. It's not clear that just as parents can homeschool, they can start homeschooling co-ops. And I also think with accreditation, I think homeschooling may be part of why that is so less important, because colleges now are all taking homeschooling students,
absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely.
Being an officially accredited high school is not that significant if you want to get into a good college.
Right.
That's my impression anyway.
Let me quickly answer some of these other questions here, Maggie, before I have to go. Okay. So,
okay.
Some of the schools start without archdiocesan approval, and they have to represent themselves as a school teaching in the Catholic tradition. We insist on daily mass. So if they can't hold mass on their own campus, which they wouldn't be able to do if a bishop doesn't approve it, they go to another location, have mass there, and then come back to the school. Someone has asked there about what if the board doesn't allow parents to help? Well, the board usually is consistent, at least a large part of parents. So the parents are involved with the starting of the school, and we have a template on how to choose board members. You certainly want a variety and a mix of board members with different talents available on your board. but you do want parental involvement, but not 100% parental involvement. You do want outsiders as well, because they offer resources and a perspective that prevents you from being too narrow in your
Yeah.
focus.
I think Deanna is talking about an existing school and feeling blocked. So
Sure. Well,
in a Chesterton model, the school, the parents are starting the school, so it's a different question. Do you have a judgment about how close Chesterton schools can be located to be successful? Because you are kind of drawing on the same pool.
yeah, it really, it's a matter of distance and population centers. Like, what's going on right now in the Bay Area, those schools are not competing with each other because of the large populations. We have 2 Chesterton academies in Minnesota. One is in the Twin Cities and another one is just outside of the Twin Cities. The ideal size of a Chesterton academy is just under 200 students. You don't want to be bigger than that in order to deliver the education that we have. And so we are now at the point where we're starting to not be able to accommodate all the students that apply. So when you reach a certain level, there may be the opportunity to start a new school at another location, just because the demand will create it right there.
Great. Do we have one more? I know you have to run. Is there another question for Dale before we're gonna have the exciting part of hearing from parents who've actually done it, taken on the challenge? Not that Dale is also one of those parents, so.
Yeah, but yeah, it'll
you
be
go
great
run
to hear
that
from the
board meeting.
local folks there. But so do you sell the license of the curriculums? Yeah, when go to that chestertonschoolsnetwork.org, and that'll explain how you go about starting a school and what the costs are. We keep them minimal. We really do. We don't charge enough for the curriculum, and that's why the schools network has to raise supplemental money to support the network. We don't. Middle school is another great question. We're not there yet. Minimum size to start, it could be as low as 10 students. We've had schools start with 10 students. Ours did, but sometimes they usually start with 20 or 30. The one in Sacramento started with 40 students, which was a great start. Diversity is something diversity is not the goal, okay? Diversity happens. It's just when people find out about the school, they come from different backgrounds, and whether it's ethnic or economic or anything, but we don't make diversity the goal, we make truth the goal. This is going to starting the school because of heavy truth. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to say goodnight. I'm going to turn it over to our Tony and Suzanne and Derek. Thank you for inviting me so much, Maggie. It's just great to be with you this evening.
We really appreciate you, and
all right.
God bless and thank you. So maybe you can direct some of your questions. Yes, Derek?
I just want to answer one question that Dale didn't get to. Jamie asked, is there a framework to set tuition? And the answer is, yeah, they like you to target your tuition to be anywhere from 25% to 50% lower than the average private schools in your area.
So yes, so frugal, Catholic, and I forget the third one, but
yeah. Catholic, integrated curriculum, and affordable.
So Suzanne and Tony, let's start with, since Sacramento's been around for a while, the Chesterton Academy of Sacramento. First of all, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Suzanne, start with you.
Sure.
How did you?
Yeah, Tony and I both went to a classical Catholic college program and met each other because of that, and ended up through another graduate of the same program getting roped into this endeavor in Sacramento. We are the parents of 8 children. And Dale's absolutely right. There is a complete need for something that's classical, faithfully Catholic, and affordable. And for us, homeschooling was the answer to that for many, many years. Our oldest is 27, our youngest is 10. And we've done homeschooling all the way up through 8th grade for everybody. And then we've done a variety of things for high school. And like you say, you kind of have to choose too. And so when we were asked,
Well, now, step a minute and on that point, because I think it's important. Chesterton only does high schools. Obviously, there's a lot of great classical liberal grade schools and middle schools. But I understand that not for every child, but for some children, especially boys, not exclusively, there comes a time when it really feels like being taught primarily by mom. It's not the right thing for that person, that there's a real desire to be out in the world in some way. Is that what you found in your family?
we really did. And like you say, particularly the boys need to be called up and called out by men if possible. So this really does help with that. We've got actually predominantly male teachers at our Chesterton Academy. And just the opportunity, again, the parent is the primary educator, but when you can partner with the Chesterton Academy and we open every day with Mass, with faithful priests, they have confession available before Mass every day. Once a month on First Fridays, we have adoration and confession available there. We've got our priests out playing basketball with the kids during the lunch hour. And, our school is incarnational. Our faith infuses every subject. And so when a child gets, within the home, of course, you would hope that everything's infused with love of God and that the faith is the air you breathe. There comes a point in a child's life where they want to know what's going on out there. And to be able to transition into the world in a location with adults and peers who are all trying to pursue a life of holiness, to actually be able to study an integrated curriculum where faith and reason dovetail with one another is it just expands upon what you offer as a family. And I think really is an excellent foundation. And with that Chesterton charism of joy and of being able to ask the questions and know that our faith stands up to that. Ask the questions you have, learn the answers to that, and be ready when the world asks you for a reason for your faith, when the world presents to you something that's false, to be able to joyfully ask them a question. Why do you think that? And to not be afraid to, in a kind and cordial way, stand up for the truth and not be afraid.
Tony, what is your experience with the Chesterton model?
Well, I describe it as somewhere halfway between, kind of in the right spot along this continuum between thinking that you want to start a school because there needs to be one and just trying to have to invent every wheel and figure everything out for yourself and make a bunch of mistakes on the one end. And that's not a good situation to be in. And on the other end, having somebody tell you exactly what to do every step of the way and not have any flexibility and not have it reflect the unique people that actually start it. The Chesterton model has been this great halfway point between those two extremes. There is an enormous, what we found is going through the startup year, which involves, among other things, a short conference, a couple of day conference that a couple of your founders attend early in the year. And then that's followed by forming a board locally that's going to undertake this startup. And then an entire academic year where you're doing a lot of work that's guided by a set of instructions and templates that the network has developed so that you know how far in advance do you need to be doing this and in what sequence do you need to be doing your fundraising, doing your corporate organization, doing your academic planning, doing your hiring, doing your recruiting. The network's got resources that we were able to use. And I want to be honest, it's not like it was effortless. It's not anything like it was effortless. It's a lot of work. But a lot of the most important things, we already had a guide to show us mostly how to do it and in what order to do it. But it was also something, I mean, we've got a lot of very passionate and generous and creative people on our board, and everybody had something that they were perfect at to do. And so it was a very interesting experience as we came to the end of the startup year, which, is like May, June, before your first, students arrive on campus in August, your opening year, which was, we had spent this year with everybody on the board, working on everything kind of side by side and knowing everything that was going on. And almost like the moment we hired a headmaster and hired faculty and had students show up, it just launched. And we had to adjust sort of emotionally to, now we don't know what's going on every moment of the day. And, so we have to.
Baby was born.
Yeah, yeah.
Born.
We've been fortunate. Two of our daughters are students at the school. One's a senior and one's a freshman. And so, it's been a really, really cool experience as parents, also having the responsibilities we've got as part of our board, getting to know the people we've worked with on our board and our faculty has just been an amazing blessing. Several people that we already knew but didn't know as well. So I guess the thing I would conclude with is that you think that you're getting your own kids educated. What you're really doing is starting a community around the common project of all of us educating our kids in a certain way. And just like all the parents on a given sports team all come together around exactly what that team does, or, a group of families that's part of a, whose husbands or sons are part of a military unit, you all come around about what that particular thing is about, and just the friendships and the community that's been built around this common project of starting this school and then keeping it rolling and growing has just been really, really a blessing.
Well, thank you for that, Tony. Maybe I could bring in Derek Kulda, one of the founders of the Chesterton Academy of St. James. And Derek, why don't you tell us the story of how, take us from, were you on that very first Zoom event that we held, or did you come in, were you pulled in afterwards by one of the people on that?
Sure. Yeah, well, before I get into that, for all of you out there who are wondering, should I do something like this, the short story of why I got involved with the group to start a Chesterton Academy of St. James was, it was simply just a calling. It was a calling that I felt like I almost got tricked into. But the story is, Maggie, you had a call with some people in the Bay Area that I wasn't part of. Mike Birdsall was part of that. Apparently it was around December of 2020. And in early 2021, one day after Mass, Mike Birdsall came up to me and said, hey, do you want to go to Chicago with me and explore opportunities with this classical Catholic high school model? And my wife and I, we love a getaway, and we had some friends out there. So we said, sure, we'll go on a trip to Chicago. And we went out there, and before I even got out there, I called my buddy out there and I said, hey, have you heard anything about Chesterton? And he said, yes, that's where my two students go. And I was a founding family at that school. And I do all the marketing for that school with my marketing company. So I thought that was kind of neat and curious.
Let me just pause again too, because I know Dale mentioned, this is the very first, if you call them up and say, I'd like to found a Chesterton school, they'll say, come to this conference, right? That's pretty much step one. You get you out of the internet mode and in a room together and figure out, first of all, if you're serious, and then the effects of getting to know a bunch of people who are all doing the same big venture together, right?
Right. But, I didn't even go into it with that in mind. I was very disappointed in the schooling that my children had, and the very few options I had. And I heard that there was a model of classical Catholic education. So I just wanted to learn more about that. I didn't, I wasn't necessarily sure that, I just wanted to learn. I was just exploring. So by the end of the conference, Juliet and I realized that this was not just a getaway. We were being set up by God and Maggie Gallagher and Mike Birdsall. It was exciting, but I honestly did feel a little tricked. And I'm telling the story for all of you out there who are just, it's like Maggie started out saying, oh, you need $1 million and you need, all this planning and you have to have it all worked out. We did not have anything like that.
Derek, can I just add in here real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, so Juliet here. So if any of you out there have been praying for a long time to do something like this, and maybe it hasn't happened. So I think that's one of the reasons God gives you a big family. We have 10 kids, but by the time like 2 have already gone through college and another 2, and then now we're in high school and we're down to our last one going into 1st grade. And it happened. We have been praying for this to be a part of starting a classic curriculum school since we've been married for 30 years. Because I had the experience of going to Trivium and we've been experiencing it on the East Coast. So we were already exposed to what these classic schools look like. And we kept feeling called throughout our whole marriage to be a part of it, but it wasn't happening on our timeline. And it was almost as if the prayers all ripened at a time on God's timeline. And Lyra's on our board. She's there as well. Like what was amazing is when you go through the motions and let God do the rest, he does it. And as busy as we are and as much as we had going on, it became very clear very quickly that we were just going to be a part of this, what God had planned. And he put so many things together. We could go on and on and on about it, but it was a lot of prayer, a lot of alignment with the board that even God put the board together, all of that. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. And then I just wanted to add, we came back from that trip and we really, Juliet and I both, and Mike, we were excited. We were like, wow, this is amazing. And then 2 months later, I was at the Napa Institute. Again, Juliet and I go there for like the food and drinks and the good crowds and the good friends there. But we went to a talk by Dr. Aaron Cariotti, who was giving this sort of the genesis of this new woke religions of wokeism. And at the end of the presentation, a gentleman named Andy Love asked a question. He said, okay, Doc, I see how we got to all this wokeism and what has happened to education. What do we do about it? And without pause, Dr. Cariotti said, K through 12 education. By the time the kids get to me, so he was a ethicist and a medical professor at UCI. He says, by the time the kids get to me in college, the toxic ideologies are already entrenched in their minds and hearts. And there's, not necessarily a lot that he can do with them. So as soon as I heard that, I remember the moment clearly. It just, God's call was confirmed. I realized we had no way out. We were doing this. And then at the Napa Institute, that's where we met Lyra, who's on this call, and Marie, who was connected to us. I think they might have been on your December call, Maggie.
Yes.
And Mike Birdsall connected us, and we met them there for lunch, and they were incredible. Also through Mike and maybe your group, we met, John Dooling and Eileen. We just met them at a baptism. Mike Birdsall met them at a baptism. So before you know it, boom, 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 our board was together, and we had our first meeting where we looked at some of the Chesterton promotional information together, and we prayed. We said, do you want to do it? And everyone said yes. So we formed our board and got started. And one neat thing is very soon after we started, we were get the incredible blessing of getting Father Cornelius Buckley on our board, who is just a giant in the world of Catholic classical education. And also one thing I want to say is I went to the same program that Tony and Suzanne went to at USF, and Father Buckley was one of our professors, as well as Father Fesio.
University of San Francisco was one of these classical liberal institutes that the university got shut down for Purdue. I don't know why,
That was the
There isn't too
St.
many great Catholics. Yeah.
Ignatius Institute, and the ripple effects of that institute years later are incredible, because the connections that we even have of like going to Chicago and seeing Francoise, it's incredible when you do start something like this, how years the effect goes into people's lives. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that quickly, so it was Father Fessio that introduced a lot, who ran and taught at the St. Ignatius Institute, that introduced many of us to the work and writing of G.K. Chesterton.
Mhm.
And that was
Yeah, that's
very
another-
formative part of our college education and kind of an ongoing influence in our adult lives. And so I would agree with both Derek and Juliet that, the friends he's talking about in Chicago, also, from our college program, and we know others around the country, but it's not just us. There's, people from other circles and whatnot. It's just really, it's like a generation of Catholic families that have been very busy homeschooling and otherwise getting their kids through grade school, kind of getting up to a point in life where, like for me, I finally looked at myself and I said, you've been complaining your whole life about why there isn't something better. What are you going to do about it? It's
Yeah.
time to do. And so that was a very big part of our willingness to jump in when we were asked to join our school, was just a sense that somebody's got to do something.
We're watching people having their children stolen right out from under them. And it's not families that are oblivious. It's families who are trying to raise good Catholic children, and their children through their education are getting stolen right out from under them. So when we got asked to join this, it was a no-brainer. And I think when you think of that mission of the salvation of souls and realize that you can evangelize the entire Catholic community in the area through the children, and we just started a spring speakers series that we're inviting everybody to in the evenings once a month. And so yeah, we've ended up, you look around and go, oh, wait a minute, these various people that I knew from college are involved in Chesterton academies all over the country. And then every year there's the summit for the board members and the faculty members at the Chesterton academies. They all come together for a few days, and Dale speaks. There's a number of great speakers. And what's great is we can focus on the mission, and the network provides the templates and the tools and whatnot needed to know what's the next right thing to do. Then the network becomes a resource as well. Everybody has been so generous in that, you start looking at your fundraising. Oh, we want to put on a gala. Let's reach out to this established Chesterton Academy, ask them what they did, and they'll let you look at their run of show. And this is what we did. This is what worked. People will, you have the network logos and templates, and even
Well, it's
here's
a lot
another-
to do. So there's this, starting a school. You know how to run a family by this point, and whatever your professional career is, and something about running a parish, but mostly parents don't feel competent to start a school, and Chesterton Academy kind of tells you, yes, you can do this. And I have to say, a lot of the schools a number of the schools get started don't make it, but it's still that instead of sitting around and complaining about your bishop or complaining about the local school, and which we've all done, and it didn't get us very far. It's like, it must have been incredibly liberating. Particularly, Derek, I'm thinking about you when I know you say you kind of feel, but all of a sudden you realize it's not somebody else's job to make this school happen and to offer that opportunity to your own kids, obviously, but then to the whole community.
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that, because I'm kind of a systems and models nerd. But to back up a little bit, speak to something that Tony and Suzanne said, is I just realized hearing you speak, Tony and Suzanne, I think we got formed at USF in the middle of this kind of toxic culture, and then even within the church, our St. Ignatius Institute getting pressures and getting attacked and eventually getting kicked out. We learned how to just kind of scrum and keep our eyes focused on the truth amidst all the mayhem. But in the past 30 years since then, Juliet and I, we've run a construction company, a land development company. We have a big real estate company. We've raised our 10 kids over the past 30 years. And it's remarkable how, we've worked from all demographics of people from farm workers all the way up to Silicon Valley executives. And and personally am just amazed at some of the people that I encounter who are smart, educated. They seem like rational people, but are totally bought into all this just toxic ideologies, and it just racks my brain. And I realized, and my kids have always said, "Hey, Dad, why don't we just move to Montana or just get the heck out of here?" And I said, "Well, how would you feel if one day you heard an announcement that Archbishop Corleone said, 'That's it, I'm out'?" Someone's got to stay and fight it out. And the best solution that I've found is K through 12 education. I'm not going to bother with all my peers. Well, I mean, I will, but I'll pray for them. But I think I'm going to be more effective with the Chesterton Academy and building up the next generation. And then about the models is, so we run a real estate company. My wife runs the sales department. I run the operations department. I'm a guy who loves systems, processes, and procedures. One of the things I loved about the Chesterton model is that they have the model. They have strategic options, systems. They have accountability. Like Dale said, they're working on an accreditation program. As Tony said, once we signed up after discovery days, I think we paid $450 a month. I think now it's up to $650 a month. And with that subscription, we are part of a process and a procedure that Suzanne laid out a little bit. But every month we had a group cohort phone call, and they would go over all the homework, all the things that we were expected to do that month. And then we would meet next month. We would talk about how it went, and then all the homework and chores for the following month. And we would do that month after month after month, all the way to launch. They have the curriculum in there. They have headmaster meetings, all the networking, and so much support. And so I don't have to worry. All I have to do is just follow the process and procedure. As Tony said, it's not easy, but it's simple. So, simple, but not easy. So we just follow the process, follow the procedure. One of the things I loved about it is if I don't have to worry about having disagreements with my board or my parents, because I get to say, "Hey guys, we're just following the model. Here's the model. This is what works, and this is what we're going to follow." And
That's a good thought. I wanted to thank you, Derek. I think that's really useful and encouraging. I know that we have the Star of the Sea, which converted their grade school, Stella Maris Academy, into a classical liberal school, is now working on starting a high school. And I just either is it Adam Adamson or Christina, one of you, Alex Adamson.
yeah,
Alex, if you're on, do you want to say hi and then you pop up and tell us about where you are in this journey? Because we have an established school recently, but established. We have a brand new school that's off to a blazing start. And Derek, we were talking, you were really handicapped by real estate, which for a real estate guy, but that is the limiting factor in Menlo Park, right next to Stanford, one of the wealthiest and most expensive real estate markets. And it wasn't really until August, you're starting in September, that you knew where the school was going to be located, which is on the grounds of St. Patrick's Seminary in the old Bishop's Dower House, as I call it, which is it's like practically like Hogwarts Academy or something. It's a really cool place. And I understand that your applications are pouring in, and next year is looking to be a big growth year for Chesterton Academy St. James. Is that right?
Now, real quick, Maggie, on that, we were on Lyra's on the board. I think we were on our 5th back-to-back novena for location. We were 2 hours from announcing to the students at a barbecue at Lyra's house where our location was going to be. We had an industrial warehouse kind of teed up, and we were handed keys literally 2 hours before to the Archbishop's sort of country mansion on the 40-acre property. Like, it was more than we could have ever dreamed of. And so many doors closed on us throughout a year and a half. And for that door to open, it was one of those moments where you just know God is in control. And Lyra, do you want to add anything? So I know Lyra's been a big part.
Yes, that's certainly true. There's so many Holy Spirit moments for the location. But I did want to go back and, Dale had mentioned that, you can open the school with 10 kids. We opened with 7.
Yep.
Getting our location 2 weeks before classes were about to start, we had 7 kids and we were hamstrung because they waited for us and believed our promise that we were going to open in a peninsula location. Right. So Father Ilo very generously offered us space in San Francisco. We couldn't do that. There was probably space in San Jose. We couldn't do that. We were wedded. But we did open with the 7 kids. So, for those of you who are hearing, you need 10 kids, 20 kids or more, you need $1 million. We had nothing close to that,
Yep.
but we still opened. The biggest things for opening a Chesterton school, right, or any classical school, because we're all tired of what's been being given to the kids that we know, right, the children whose lives are being stolen and their faith is being stolen from them, is that you want to offer them a great alternative. And the Chesterton Schools Network offers that curriculum. It's not a secret, it's open. You can see it when you go to visit any of the Chesterton schools. So really what you're looking for, if you're thinking of opening a school, is you're going to need to find a headmaster and faculty, your location, some funding, your students. The network helps with so many other things. You don't need to look for a website designer, what your logo will be, the colors, policies, handbook, that sort of thing. All of these things, you have templates to work on. So it really makes it easy, not completely, not completely easy, but it makes it a lot easier actually to set it up.
I say
We're not
simple.
starting from scratch.
Simple, maybe not easy, but simple.
Right, simpler, yes.
So
Yeah, they have
we-
templates for a headmaster contract, for your teacher contracts, employee handbooks, parent teacher, student handbooks. As Alara said, the marketing, the fundraising, they have little toolkit suites for everything that you need.
That's great.
Yeah,
I have a couple of quick questions and I can offer my advice, maybe you guys. One is, how do you get, if you don't have the blessing from the diocese, how do you get priests to support you? And then Lisa is asking, how did you find your locations and priests to support you? And I would say one simple thing is that if you can't get a priest to come into the school because the bishop doesn't want to give one to you, you take the kids to a parish daily mass and you have a relationship, with the priest, because the children are there in daily mass. It's really challenging to find a priest who would be upset that a bunch of kids come there the first thing before they go to school.
Exactly.
And as the diocese learns of your commitment to serve and be part of the diocese, a lot of these problems. Now, there may be, if your bishop tells you he doesn't want the school, you're in a different situation. But typically, it's just you're not been formally endorsed yet because you haven't been started. And how is he going to endorse something he doesn't even really know what it is? Is there anything about locations, finding the locations? I know in Menlo Park, it was really the Archbishop who came forward. I'm sure you would have found another solution. How did Sacramento? I know in the very first Chesterton Academy, they rented a Protestant school that was no longer in use, but had the facilities. So you don't need a building. You look for a place that you can afford. And if you're starting small, you need a small space, really. Sacramento, do you have any thoughts on how you found, Suzanne and Tony, your location?
Yes. So we, when we started out, of course, you always want to go and see if you can get the blessing of the bishop at the outset. And, when we did that and did some inquiries at the diocese, they mentioned a number of parishes with defunct schools. And so one of our board members started looking down the list of these schools and where the locations were. And then she looked at one of them and she went to the website and noted that the pastor previously was with the very first Chesterton Academy back in Minnesota. And so a couple of the board members went and met with him, and he was just delighted because he knew the Chesterton model. And he said, there is no other school I would have at my parish. So he, had to get obviously the permission of the bishop to have us there, but he's been very, very supportive. They're saying the masses for the students. And, he's given us a good deal on our rent. And what I would just say on that is it's been one novena after another. We've got a board member who's just wonderful at figuring out the next feast and what the next novena is. And there have been so many times, whether it's the location or getting the MOU from the diocese or getting our tax exempt status, where, you finish another novena, you've done everything you can. And it's kind of like, the loaves and the fishes, where it's like Jesus says, bring everything you've got, and you do it and you look at it and you go, that's not going to be enough. And then when it's clear that it's not you anymore, God just hands you the next thing. And that's really how it's been for us. Tony and I have a devotion to Saint Uniprocera, and we really look at this series, these schools. Saint Uniprocera brought the faith to a pagan California, and he established his missions one day's walk away from each other throughout the state. And we have appealed to his patronage throughout this process and have seen so many of these Chesterton academies popping up. And that's the image in my mind, is a Chesterton academy, one day's walk away from the next one, bringing the Catholic faith back to a very much paganized California, and, giving it to these students right when they're on the cusp of going out into the world and have got so many decades ahead of them of being able to share that faith. But yeah, I mean, prayer is really at the base, at the foundation of each step. And the network is also very helpful when you start to hit a block and go, okay, what next? We've tried this and this and this. And, they're good at giving you the next step for the next right thing.
So
That's great.
walk is good.
Can I pause a minute though? Because I do want to get Alex Adamson or Christina, who's working with him. Alex, can you say hello so you'll pop up a minute?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Alex, yes, I can hear you. Great to
Yeah.
meet you.
I'll
And
say
so
1
where are
minute
you
and then I'll probably pass it to Christina. So I would just echo
Oh,
everything Derek
well-
said as you're thinking about this.
Okay, but what I really want to know is where are you in the process right now? I think you just had a board meeting and formally decided you're going to start a high school. What's the plan?
We did. It was last night. We were at Discovery Days a week ago, and we're planning to open the Chesterton Academy of the Nativity at Star of the Sea in August of 2024.
Woo-woo! That is great news. Thank you. We could
And
use
Terrific.
the
And
friends-
what is
I
your
also
target?
friends to the
feel
north.
like I got tricked into it. Derek was part of it, so he's paying it forward.
Yeah.
And my dad mentioned it, and yeah, that's our brief story.
So how many students do you expect? Now you have the advantage of the Classical Liberal Academy grade school on Star of the Sea grounds. So you have a natural feeder school, I would think.
Yeah, we're early, so it's hard to tell. There's 4 8th graders in that school right now, and I think we've sort of determined on a feasibility study it's probably going to be tough to fill our school with that K through 8 group. And if you did the math, I'm not sure you'd start this in the middle of San Francisco, but we're doing it on faith instead of math.
Oh, well, wonderful. Christina, do you wanted to turn it over to Christina to say
Yeah,
a few
please.
words?
Yeah, no,
Christina?
I appreciate, yeah, sure. Maggie, thank you for having us kind of share our experience. I want to touch on a point that I like to share with a lot of people in my life. I've seen a lot of God math. So God just takes something and he multiplies it so much larger than we would ever anticipate. And I've heard many testimonials tonight about that exact circumstance. We don't know how many students we're going to have to start, but I'm completely confident we can pull this off because it is God ordained. And he has put each of us on our board in the positions that we're in right now to be able to contribute to the success of this school. And what a blessing it is to bring this to San Francisco, to the Den of Sin, where my husband and I are raising our children in the faith. And we're refusing to leave because we know that we're missionaries here. And this is just one of our missions.
That's wonderful. Thanks to both of you. Tony, I think I interrupted you. Can I go back to you now where
Oh,
we've probably got another 10 minutes or so before we should wrap up and then let anyone who wants to stay hang out and ask questions and introduce themselves.
sure. No, I actually was just making the comment that, the Father Sarah's mission's a day's walk away, but a 2-hour drive is nice too. There was a question that just came across that I think was a really valuable one to share the network experience with. And it's Tracy Dreyer. How does a big homeschool community get together and start a high school? And the network, I think, has a brilliant way of bringing that that group of homeschoolers together on the one thing that tends to keep homeschoolers apart from each other, which is curriculum and method.
Yeah, pedagogy.
The network has a standardized curriculum that all the schools teach, and it's very good. I think all of us who've homeschooled know that you put 3 homeschoolers in a room and they'll come up with 4 perfect curricula. And that's just kind of one of the strengths of homeschooling that can also be a weakness when you're trying to do things together, is that ability to fine tune it so that it's just perfect for exactly your kids. The Chesterton curriculum is really, really solid. It's very, very good. And it's non-negotiable. It just is the curriculum. The courses that the kids take, the sequence that they take them in, the book lists are pretty locked in. And that immediately gets past what's gonna sap a lot of energy from a group of homeschoolers getting together to start a school, which is all the time and some disagreement, maybe sometimes a lot of disagreement, that's going to go into what you're teaching. You don't have to do that with this. So I think that the network has that problem solved very, very well. That the other thing that I just want to revert back to something we were talking about earlier about just kind of that sense that you get that it's time to do something. So I think it's the 5th anniversary of Rod Dreyer's book, The Benedict Option, this year. And it's just funny. I remember reading that book thinking, interesting, lots of, like important things to discuss. But he had that chapter in there saying, homeschooling is okay, but what you really need to do is be founding classical academies. And I remember reading that thinking, well, wow, thanks for recognizing all the work we're doing homeschooling. Who's going to start classical academies? That's crazy. And as it turns out, that might be the rightest thing in that entire book, is that it is, I think for a lot of us, it's come time to take what we've learned as homeschooling families, as kind of dissident families in other schools, and build something that our kids' generation can then build into the next level. And the just the amount that the network materials and tools take you down that road, so that if you've got a group of people with a common passion for doing this, you will find, I think, if this is something that God is calling you to do, the right people to do it with and the resources you need. And one really practical thing around location and spiritual and clerical support. So if you live in a city, in a metro area, you should be looking at the inner suburbs, the suburbs that were built in like the late 60s, early 70s. Those are full of both public schools, private schools, and parochial schools that are empty. Okay, because people moved out of there to the outer suburbs in the last 20 years. And so there's just lots of space there. And then also think about, well, who are the priests that we know? Who would we want being our chaplain? Or if we can't get a full-time chaplain, providing spiritual support for the school, go talk to him and find out what you think you could do together. And it runs the gamut from, like Dale was talking about. You start out just going to a parish mass every day, and then you build from there. To, I mean, we have the great blessing to have the order that has been associated with the Chesterton Academies from the beginning, providing us a full-time chaplain and school space at a parish that they run. That just fell into our lap, really. Okay, so I don't want to like overpromise on that, but go ask and go look. You never know what's out there until you go look for it.
I would just add to that, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if your homeschoolers are happy homeschooling, you know, this is an option, but it's not the option for everybody. And I think that, you know, you can operate in the same space. Homeschooling works very well for some people. There are a lot of people out there who just really don't see homeschooling as an option, but want their kids to be formed well in the faith. And, you know, those people are also very accustomed to being very involved at whatever the location is where their children go to school, knowing that they need to volunteer and whatnot. There's other people that it's not for because they're actually going for the big name, huge school and all the bells and whistles that go with that. And Andrew Youngblood at the network always just says, you know what, you just tell them what you have to offer. And you don't have to twist anybody's arm or convince anybody. Maybe it's for them, maybe it's not. But there's a lot of people that are going to say, hey, you know what, this is for me.
One thing that I think is important to say on this, you know, what are we starting and how we started. The network describes it this way. There's 3 ways you can run this school. As a homeschool co-op, as an independent private Catholic school, and actually as a full-up diocesan school. It would be owned by, you know, the bishop of the diocese. So there are people at the network and schools in the network that have experienced all 3 of those forms, and, you know, can kind of help you with, you know, organizing it if what it really is a homeschool co-op. And that's, I think, very doable.
All right. And Maggie, if it's okay, I just have a few more comments
Sure.
to add to Tony's. One, I just want to go back and regarding the if you're starting out of school and you're worried about not getting the bishop's support, you can start. You can't call yourself a Catholic school. You just have to say we're a school in the Catholic tradition, and then you work on the bishop to get a memorandum of understanding and an agreement with our diocese to allow you to call yourself a Catholic school. But until then, there's no problem, and then they will eventually, you know, come around, just like Dale had said. And then I want to explain just the history of the name of our school, because what Tony and Suzanne said about oh my gosh, the Saint Juan Diego, not Juan Diego, Junipero Serra is my parish is Our Lady of the Pillar Parish, and it got its name because of the Pilar Point. And so when the Spanish explorers were coming up the coast of North America, they gave a name to every point. So our whole area was commemorated to Our Lady of the Pillar. Well, Our Lady of the Pillar was the very first apparition to anybody, and she appeared to, guess who? St. James. And it was actually a bilocation, and St. James was the apostle who was out trying to evangelize in that part of the world, in the Iberian Peninsula. He was having a hard time, and he was praying and missing the Blessed Mother, and she appeared to him on a pillar and said, St. James, toughen up. Not only are you going to evangelize all these people, but they're going to evangelize the whole world. And then they became Spain, who of course came up and evangelized all of California. And kind of like you, Suzanne, we identify almost with St. James. Here we are now in the San Francisco Peninsula in the tradition of St. James, out there trying to evangelize and do our work out here, and we feel that we're having such a hard time, and we are invoking Blessed Mother's support and help. And the last one there is Father Fessio told us, he says, you should start your school if you even have 4 students. And then as far as the Chesterton Schools Network, the other benefits of that is all the scale. So you get to learn from the other schools what worked well, and then what challenges other schools had and how they overcame them. And the last thing I just want to say is just, mindset is really, really important. I think, your life can be about problems or it can be about opportunities, and, what you focus on expands. And if you just focus on what are my opportunities here, and then just go through the motions, let God do the rest. If it doesn't work out, then it must not be God's will.
Derek, that's beautiful. I do notice also there's a tendency in these questions to focus on the problems.
Mhm.
And it could well be that any person on this call is not being called to start a school.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be a good reason why it won't work, right?
Mhm.
It's like anything new, the chances of failure are not small. And starting a school is a big venture. So on the other hand, there's something liberating about that. As you say, if you pray and you think God is calling you to this, then it can't be wrong, right? You can learn. You can find problems, and then you can learn how to get around them with other people's
And you'll
help as well.
I think God will give you the assurances that you need. I was just talking to Eileen, one of our board members, who I think is on the call the other day, and I remember when we very first started, I had this sensation of like, oh my gosh, what are you having me do here? But now we're just having so much fun. It's just, it's stressful, but it's like, it feels like a privilege to be.
Real quick
part of
too,
something.
Derek, you guys, when you go to Discovery Days in Chicago, you become a part of a cohort if you actually sign on for the monthly, $500 a month to get into the monthly calls. And we were a cohort for 2022, and we were a part of, I think, 12. So you become, every month you can lean into the headquarters call. There was someone in Africa starting a school. So you're with a group of like-minded individuals from all over. So you're
And
not
they're all
alone.
going through the same challenges.
Does anyone know if there are any single-sex Chesterton academies? I don't believe that I know of any, although I don't know if
I'm not aware
that's
of
something
any.
that's forbidden.
It's not
Yeah.
it's not in their model.
Yeah. So you'd have to talk to Chesterton if you could start one using their Brandon materials or not.
Brendan, stand up. I don't know if you saw Brendan's hand up or if he put his question in the chat.
I didn't. Brendan, you want to say something? You have to unmute yourself possibly. We've still got. Well, he's the one asking if there's any single sex education. Sorry, so we just answered him. I think it is probably time for us to thank everyone. Now, I don't know who can stay. I'm going to stay for another half an hour. And what we usually do in our social hours is we ask if you are willing to put on your video, and then we just introduce each other like we're all in a room chatting afterwards, having some coffee. I would also like to ask again, if you have not put your zip code and the biggest city close to you in the chat box, we'd really appreciate it if you can, because then we can start finding out, just as we did with the Chesterton Academy St. James, if there are parents in a geographic region who are all interested, or they don't have to be parents, but mostly they're parents. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I see I'm getting some more.
Maria, I see a question about recruiting. You want me to answer that?
Sure.
From Maria Forbes. So Maria, recruiting teachers and headmasters was, I think, the easiest part of this whole job. I think there are so many people out there, teachers who are dying for schools like Chesterton Academies, and hiring was no problem. And again, this was a Holy Spirit story, but our headmaster reached out to us. That he heard through the grapevine that we were starting a school, but we had several applicants and a lot of good options, and several applicants for teachers.
Well, and he had already taught at 2 different Chestertons, so the name brand is out there, which is really helping us. So Brendan,
Yes, it makes it easy to hire. Yes.
Brendan, did we answer your question?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay. Just
Right.
want to make.
Sorry, I'm busy copying all these zip codes. That's why I'm a little bit tuned out, but I think
Maggie,
it's
may I add
yes.
something
Go ahead.
on recruiting? You know, the Chesterton name brand is out there. So I have to say, within 2 days of our website opening, and it was very elementary website, we had Thomas Aquinas College calling us saying, we hear you're opening in Menlo Park. What can we do to help? Do you have job descriptions? Right? So what you're going to find is there are a lot of people excited that Chesterton schools are opening around the country, that there's a real alternative to high school education, to Catholic high school education, and they're going to find you.
That's the power of a brand, right?
Yes.
So it's
It's a movement.
great to be part of it.
It's a movement.
Yes, yeah. And I would just want to give a special shout out and welcome to Gavin Colvert, who is the headmaster of Stella Maris Academy. Gavin, you want to say hello to everyone and tell us how things are going at Stella Maris?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the classical world of education. Things are going wonderfully here at Stella Maris Academy. And as Alex mentioned, we have our second graduating class this year. It's an elementary school, and we're looking to provide high school educations for those students that, you know, we can say with joy, you know, is everything that we're providing at the elementary level. So we're really excited about what Chesterton is doing, and I've been so pleased to see Chesterton St. James start in Menlo Park and get going.
So how many students did you start with at Stella Maris? I know in theory you weren't starting a school, you were converting a school, but
Yeah.
it shut down for a couple of years and then restarted.
Well, we did
So how
start
many-
with 0, so that the pandemic closed the last piece of what was open. That was the preschool. We didn't have families who were willing to come in person at that point in time. So when I came to Stella Maris in the summer of 2020, we actually started from a brand new students, brand new faculty. And speaking about loaves and fishes, the Archdiocese said to us, you know, well, we will not allow you to open if you don't have at least 25 students. And we want to have that by, you know, March of the preceding year, academic year before you open. And so we were there in February, and we had about, I think, 8 or 9 students that were committed. And we did a novena to St. Joseph, 31-day novena to St. Joseph. And on the day that the novena ended, 9 applications came across my desk. And then it rolled on from there. So we had 25. And having worked in Catholic schools, you know, prior to this, my experience was always, you know, recruiting in October, November, December, January. We actually had families who were hearing about us in June and July. And so we hit just under 50 in the July before we started in August. And we've grown now, we're just under 60. So growth is, you know, slow but significant. And, you know, we see that more and more people are really interested in, you know, classical schools, in Catholic schools that are joyfully Catholic, that have all of their faculty joyfully Catholic and really want to provide a great education for kids. So we're really excited that Chesterton is coming into the San Francisco space. In fact, it'll share premises with us. So we really look forward to that. But you know, I think this is the moment for classical education in the San Francisco Bay Area, really.
Can I just add one just quick note though on that? And Father Ilo was one of the trailblazers around here, so we appreciate him. But we can't forget, you guys, it's not going to be totally easy. We were shocked that some people thought we would be divisive. And, some of that's maybe our local, other Catholic schools that are established that might think we're going to compete for students. But, sometimes we just got the sense that because we, teach Latin, we're going to be a divisive group within the church. So be prepared to outreach and talk to people. And Lyra, we started those info nights, and Lyra would have these amazing dinners and cocktail parties. And you have to start talking to people about what you're doing. And don't be upset or frustrated that they maybe have preconceived ideas about what this is. Just go start talking about what it is, because it does take a little while for people to get comfortable. They just don't know.
All right. Well, thank you, Juliet. And thanks to all of you trailblazers who are on, both the panelists and those in the audience who care about Catholic education. And that's why you're here. Your time is precious. And we are very grateful that you spent it with us. This is one of a series. Now, this event was on the Chesterton model. It's not the only model, but it is one that's very helpful if the resource you have is just a few very dedicated parents as a place to begin. And so you will probably receive invitations to a number of our events. Please unsubscribe if we are bothering you, but pay attention, because I think we'll have some more events. And in particular, I'm kind of excited. Kevin is not here tonight because his wife, I think, has just gone into labor with their third child, or is close to it. And but I think there's a lot that working together we can offer to help each other. And that's the bottom line of the Chesterton model. There are many great things about it, but it's creating a community that sustains a vision and a mission. And in the end, that's what I think makes for a joyful Catholic community. If you'd like to go, we are done. If you'd like to stay, hang out for a little bit. And again, if you want to give me your zip code or the biggest city you're close to, we got some more of those. So that's really helpful. Because otherwise I just take your zip code and then I have to Google what city it is. And then I have to guess what city it's next to. And you just tell me, it saves me a little bit of time. But we're looking forward to learning from tonight how we can help, and we're grateful for you to be a part of it. I think some great things are going to happen, and we're certainly grateful for the Bay Area, and Sacramento is almost the Bay Area. The Bay goes pretty far up there. It's a little too inland, I guess, but so thank you and good night. Normally we like to close with the Archbishop blessing us, but I feel like I don't want to do that. So I'll just say good night, welcome. Our next, if you're in the Bay Area, our next big liturgical event is a March 11th Lenten prayer service. We're bringing in this fabulous choir from Dallas. Dr. Alfred Calabresi directs it, and we are taking Renaissance masterworks. And then we've asked living Catholic composers to set the same text, and Archbishop Corleone will be doing the prayer service, and EWTN will be broadcasting it live. So you look for that in our newsletter, the link, so you can watch it if you'd like and participate with our wonderful Archbishop Corleone. Thank you again. Thank you, Gavin, Derek, Juliet, Suzanne, and Tony. And I do hope that if you're parents looking to start school, and I'll just say, since I see the question again, you will get a link to the recording. You just have to open stuff from Benedict 16th. We will send it to everyone who registered, and then we will also send it out in our weekly newsletter. So make sure we're not going to your spam. That's all I can say. All right. Thank you again. Good night. If
Thanks,
you'd like to
seeing you all.
stay.
Thank you.
Good night. All right, I'm going to switch to gallery view so we can see. Oh, there's Christina Sullivan also working on the new Star of the Sea, Chesterton, whose name I don't know. Thank
And
you very much.
Rob Morris was saying he's interested in looking for a headmaster position. If he's still on, Rob, I suggest you just reach out to the Chesterton Schools Network, and they are tapped in, and just they will connect you with schools who are looking for headmasters.
Yeah, there's also the Institute, what is that, for Classical Liberal Education? I think they probably maintain job banks as well.
Yeah,
And so if you start Googling those institutions and connect with them, I'm sure people will be delighted. Yeah, someone was talking about the need for benefits and salary, and I think teachers do need benefits and salary, but in fact, if you give them fabulous, meaningful working conditions, you'd be surprised the quality of applicants that you get. Derek, would you say was your experience, and or Tony and
Yes.
Suzanne?
One
And Gavin, too.
incredibly high quality applicants. And we try to follow the archdiocesan pay scale. And just, be comparative.
One thing that is very important to understand about the economics, the business model of most schools these days, the business model is not overcompensating the teachers. I mean, we're doing the same thing in trying to follow the diocesan pay scale for our teachers. We have the great, fortune to have one of the Catholic grade school principals on our board. And that's not the expensive part of running a school. It's all the other stuff that doesn't add a lot of value, certainly doesn't add a lot of value in the classical model, that drives up the cost of running the standard school these days. And so, a lot of the questions about how do you manage to pay people a decent amount based on the tuition being lower, you pay the people that do teaching and a pretty lean administrative staff, and you don't pay anybody to be the third assistant director of this administrative department and the 5 staff that do the other thing. And I mean, that's where a lot of the bloat is in the cost of running schools these days, is just overhead and bureaucracy. The other thing about this kind of school is that there's an enormous amount of facilities cost you avoid. I mean, if you are able to locate and rent the use of a defunct Catholic school building, it's usually going to have a gym associated with it. But a lot of all large public high schools, all big Catholic high schools, most big private high schools, they've got football fields and soccer fields and, a new gym. And, there's just a ton of stuff that's really expensive to run that isn't part of what this type of education does. And so even though the tuition is quite a bit less than, the other private schools in the area, the cost structure is so much lower. Now the other thing that's important is that, the tuition has to go with fundraising. And I mean, we've been very blessed on our board. Our chair has been great with our fundraising, and his wife took the lead in running our gala, and it was very successful. I mean, there's work that you got to put into in fundraising. And I mean, I think many of us have learned, though, that's raising money is not some dark art. It's not black magic. I mean, it's a thing that you do, that you can learn how to do it. And because you're passionate about the project, you overcome whatever natural reticence you might have to ask people that can help you to help you.
Thank you, Tony. Can I stop a minute? This is supposed to be the social half hour, so we want to meet some of the people on this call, and then maybe you can interact with them. So I'm going to start with people who have their videos on, but I may call on you anyway. Let me start with Donovan Kelly. Could be Kelly Donovan. It's it works both ways.
Yeah.
Hi, Donovan.
Hi, everybody. Derek invited me to this. Family friend. I went to school with his daughter at the University of Dallas, and I taught for 5 years after graduating from UD. I did a master's program at the University of Notre Dame and I roomed with Greg Billion, if any of you happen to know. Greg.
That's our headmaster. Thank you, Donovan, for that. You and both you guys.
Yeah,
Kelly.
you're welcome. He's a great guy. So I have 3 kids, and my oldest is 5, and we're doing a co-op right now. And the educational opportunities here in Texas, I'm in the Dallas area, I'm just not impressed with a lot of them. So I'm very much into education. Right now, I'm just a tutor. I do test prep, ACT, SAT test prep. But I really do want to start a school, and I got the chance to talk to Derek about it, and he was very encouraging. And I always knew about the Chesterton Academy, partly because of Greg. But it seems like it's a great model. I really love classical education, and I'd love to get something here like that started. I'm also very much wanting to get something started for elementary schools, just selfishly for my own kids, but that's where I am.
Well, great. Thank you for joining us. What did you find most helpful, Donovan, about this?
I think just hearing even just testimonials from other people that they have gone through the process without having all of the answers on their own. I mean, I know Derek told me this too, but it's still good to hear from even more people not having the space, doing the fundraising, the amount of money needed to start the school. I mean, I'm like, if I was on a board, I'd be the education guy, I'd hope. And I'm more than willing to put in time to help organize or whatever, but I don't imagine myself as a business fundraising type of person. So, I'm raising $1 million. This sounds crazy to me. And so that was also really, really nice just to hear you don't need that much money.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, so let me talk to a couple of others, and then maybe the panelists would like to jump in and make comments. Joy Wambeki, can you introduce yourself? Where are you coming to us from?
Hi, I'm in Southwest Minnesota, near Marshall, Minnesota. We're a very small rural community. Marshall is about 12,000 people, and our closest metropolitan area is Sioux Falls. It's about an hour and a half away. We don't have anything but a public high school out here. My husband and I have been homeschooling our children. They're 16 down to 7, and we are currently doing a Great Books co-op for our high school students right now. But I'd like to provide more for the area. We've kind of fell hard for classical education a very long time ago, and I know Dale a little bit from when I lived in Minneapolis, and so we've always known Chesterton was there when he opened. It looked great. We've always had it in our minds that we would love to do this, and this is our second serious time looking at starting a Chesterton school. So I'm in contact with a couple other parents and just kind of gathering their thoughts and what might be possible. And I'm hoping that we can get it going this time.
Joy, what would be most useful to you if just selfishly, if we were to do another event like this, what would be helpful?
I think in my mind, the biggest hurdle is how to make the numbers work. The fundraising, like what other people have talked about, how do you pay teachers what they're worth while keeping the tuition low and not having, huge patrons behind you just feeding you money. That's really where I get hung up. Otherwise, so
how do you and your husband make a living?
I'm a homemaker and my husband is in IT.
Okay, so you're able to live remotely and take care of all those kids. Well, it's great to meet you, Joy, and I hope we meet you again.
Thanks, Maggie. Yeah.
Maybe one more, Allison Benesh. Why don't you introduce yourself, Allison? Where are you coming to us from?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I'm actually in Wisconsin. We moved 2 years ago from Minnesota. And as soon as we moved back to Wisconsin, I started looking around and realizing that there wasn't a high school around that I would feel comfortable with my kids who are younger going to. So I started immediately trying to connect with other parents and getting a supportive pastor on board, and so I try to gobble up as much information as I can get.
So where are you? It sounds like you're maybe farther than, you're not just thinking about starting a school, you're really beginning to form the community, or how do you think about where you are in this process?
I still at the very beginning. And like I said, we've only been here for 2 years, so we still have, you know, a lot of community to get in contact with. But I've met enough other parents who are just as enthusiastic as I am to know that it could definitely be possible. So
So where in Wisconsin are you?
oh, I'm in Reedsburg, which is near the Dells, and it's in the Madison Diocese on the north.
Ah,
Allison, starting the school is a great way to make friends.
Yeah, that'd be great.
yeah, I think I saw several people in that general area. They may all be friends of yours. So, does anyone have advice for Allison?
Well, one thing I want to say to Joy is, depending on how many students you have or sections, I mean, ideally you would just start with 9th graders or, you know, 9th and 10th, but you decide how many students you're going to have. That will determine how many teachers you're going to have. And that will really help you figure out what kind of budget you need. And then you figure out what your tuition is going to be. And of course, your tuition is not going to be enough to cover all your expenses, which will create your gap. And then you know how much you need to raise. and you think opportunities and you think big and don't think
And
about
you pray a lot of novenas. Yeah.
That's good. How about, I see that you do not look like you're Alice T. Zeng, but oh, there's Alice. Hi, Alice. Who's with you, Alice? Come say hi.
This is my husband, Thomas, and we're in Huntsville, Alabama.
Mhm.
And we moved from New Jersey over the summer. And it's interesting because before we moved, my husband had been talking about starting an all-girls high school. So
Oh, wow.
we were looking, because my daughter originally was going to an all-girls school back in New Jersey, and there was nothing in Huntsville.
Seven
similar
through
to that,
12.
yeah.
So, but there's a wonderful Catholic school here, it seems, and we're still feeling our way, but this is fascinating to see the great success that the Lord is carrying through the country. Remarkable, so gratifying to hear everybody having success.
Oh, thank you. Tracy, you want to introduce yourself? Tracy Dreyer? You turn on your video, then I'm like, no, you want to be talked to.
You have to turn off mute, Tracy.
There we are. Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to reach out as well. I'm also in the Huntsville area and been here for a couple of years now. We moved down from Massachusetts, and our oldest, she's in 3rd grade right now, but we had her enrolled in a classical Catholic school just outside of Boston and fell in love with the model. And I have not found anything that compares to what we had up there. And so it has been my sole desire to find and or create something here for our children. And just knowing that if we can get something by high school, that would be fantastic. So
How old are your kids, Tracy?
I have a 3rd grader, a kindergartner, and a 4-year-old and a baby. So.
Oh, well, it could be
All
many
young,
more
but-
tuition coming down the road.
Yes, and so it was nice to meet Alice there too, and her husband, seeing that they're in this area. So, and I have a couple other friends who are also on the call earlier. So we definitely have a group down here that's interested. We just have to together and figure out how to do this.
Tracy and Alice, that's a connect. That's good. It's have a tea party down there or something.
Yes, yes.
That's great. Deanna, you've been very patient. You've been also, thank you for your active comments on the chat room too. Where are you coming to us from?
Well, I live in a town called Peralta, which is just south of Albuquerque. And so, Chesterton of Albuquerque opened up 3 years ago. And so a lot of the stuff that Derek and Susanna and the others have mentioned about starting small, we started with the 9th grade, which is my oldest, started, and then I have 5 kids. So we have three in Chesterton right now. And there's, like everybody says, there's always the struggles trying to get things going, finding the right teachers, the right headmasters, that kind of stuff. And so we have some other little hurdles that we're trying to work out, but we love Chesterton. It's been a great way to meet other Catholic families who have a very strong faith, and the students are just fantastic. I've gotten to know many of the students just by, hanging out at the school and things like that. And so, but yeah, I want to thank you guys for sharing your information and everything. And so this helped me understand where our school board had started and some of the issues that they had to go through and some of the challenges that they had to deal with. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Deanna. It's really generous. Douglas Coombs, Chesterton Academy of Rocket City. You want to say hello and tell us what you do?
Oh, that Rocket City comment was meant for the Huntsville people, like the things. Yeah, no, I'm actually at Chesterton. My daughter's at Chesterton Academy of Albuquerque, and I was calling because I was wondering, how does the network currently screen to ensure that founding members of their board believe in classical education? And what would one do about an existing school whose board members get angry, like literally upset, and vociferously disagree with you when current parents suggest that classical Catholic education is better than standard Catholic education? This has a profound effect on the ability of the board to do their job. My daughter's had 5 headmasters in less than 24 months and numerous problems, like a teacher spending hours and hours on pro-abortion political propaganda in philosophy class, a mentally ill headmaster filing a false police report against a parent, teachers being threatened with the loss of their job for things like offering to appoint a new headmaster to updated calendars instead of the old templates the board gave them. The current handbook for students includes threats of legal action against students. And they've not only done this, but they turned down the help of qualified people like those who speak at ICLE, consult for the Cardinal Newman Society. And there's a principal I know who's brought in by Archbishop Aquila to help their diocese go classical. But anybody who has a background in classical is considered enemies by the current board. Like 7 of the 9 board members were related by blood, marriage, or employment. It's just kind of an ugly situation right now. And I'm wondering, how can we fix this? Because it's the board that selects the board and the board that hires the headmaster and the board that chooses everything. Does the network have any way to help remedy a situation like this?
Douglas, I would definitely reach out to the Chesterton Schools Network and just tell them about your grievances, because they are working on their accreditation program, and we're going to have to meet certain criteria to become accredited and then to stay accredited with their program. And it sounds like some of the stuff that you're saying is just not going to fly. So talk to them.
It breaks my heart to even hear that. And I will tell you, as our board, we all signed the oath of fidelity to the magisterium of the church, and you kind of learn pretty quickly, like you're all of the same alignment, and we were opening in 2020 and 2021, and all of the things going in California, I can tell you, have been completely insane with the mandates. And so you first need a board that does have alignment, because then they're the ones doing the hiring and all of that. And, I please don't give up on what you have. And I would think through prayer, and sometimes maybe just being a parent that's concerned, definitely what Derek said, go to the board or go to the headquarters.
Schools Network.
Yeah.
And
Definitely. They need to hear this. This is their brand. If there are a group, and particularly if there are other parents who are having a similar experience, I would not be like making specific demands. I would be going to them and telling them what you're experiencing and asking them this isn't what you thought the Chesterton model was. What happens next? And I'm sure this is not the only place where, things don't go the way they're supposed to. But I'm so sorry, because I know you are putting a lot of effort into getting a great Catholic classical liberal education. And it doesn't sound, of course, they're not here for, well, we only have one side of the story, but you're definitely not getting what you would like. And it's really important. So
So,
you'd be doing a service
Maggie?
to everyone.
I don't mean to interrupt
Thank you.
Maggie, but Doug Coombs and myself, our kids go to the same school. And so there's some other parents that probably would have wanted to be here at this meeting, but they had other commitments and things like that. So what Doug is saying is absolutely true. And there
I'm
has been,
not doubting it, Deanna, but it would still be
Right,
the
yeah.
same thing, just
but
as
no,
a courtesy, you know, that before you're making any pronouncements, you're supposed to hear from all sides, but Chesterton needs to hear from you. That's what I would say. So, and
Yeah,
you know,
no,
if there's,
I
and
appreciate that.
there's always, if there's more than one, then there's a good chance that there's a big problem. So, but if there's even only one parent who's unhappy, that's also a problem for a small school like that. And the fact that there's not a sense of responsiveness at all seems like they're not setting themselves up for success at this point. So I hope that Chesterton is able to help create a new dynamic, and I'm glad you're here. And I really do hope that you get in touch with Emily or whoever is Emily puts you in touch with on this. Emily, they managed to schedule a board meeting after accepting this against us. So that's why Dale had to leave early, and I wanted Emily on at the end precisely for this kind of question.
And Emily, the executive director of the whole.
Emily
church.
DeRosa, yeah, basically the contact info, I'm not giving, whatever is on their website to contact them. I'm pretty sure they're very responsive and they would like to know, they'd like to hear from you. And if you have any trouble, just email me and I'll figure out how to get you in touch. So. All
And
right,
Deanna, you had mentioned positive things as well. So hopefully it's not all, there might be some growing pains and different things. So, hopefully you're finding some good out there as well in what's going on.
yeah, because we
Really.
love the school. Parents, there's so many parents that have really, really worked very hard to offer their help, their assistance, but we keep getting shut down and stuff like that. But we do have a lot of parents who really, really want this to succeed, and we want it to grow, and we want it to flourish. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Deanna, and thanks for speaking up. Cameron Bick, do you want to say hello and tell us where you're coming from?
Howdy. How's it going, Maggie? My name is Cameron Bick. I also work for the Chesterton Academy of St. James. So Mr. and Mrs. Kolda, Mrs. Miseta, and Mrs. Dueling they're all my superiors. They're all my illustrious bosses. I wear a lot of hats for the Chesterton Academy of St. James. So I help them fundraise. I help out with admissions, but I think a lot of administrative stuff too. But my favorite part of it is I get to help out with student life a lot. So I'm constantly running around helping plan extracurriculars for the students. I get to help out with a lot of moral formation. Feast days, I get to do a lot of planning for what's going on. Like how are we going to celebrate properly? So really just running around doing whatever they need me to do. And
What did you do, Cameron, before this job? What were you doing?
Oh yeah, thank you, Maggie. I was a missionary with the Culture Project. So yeah, we've had missionaries in the Archdiocese in the past, but basically we're missionaries that get brought into dioceses all over the country and speak to kids in middle school, high school, and parishes about mainly the topics covered in theology of the body. So the dignity of the human person, so their own inherent goodness, and then specifically how the virtue of chastity helps reveal that, and how they can live dignified lives by living chastely.
So how did you hear about this new school? How did you make this your next job, your next missionary position?
So I was still out I got stationed in Cleveland, Ohio. And I knew it was time to move on. And but in the waning months of my last mission year, I got tasked with going to table for the Culture Project at a pro-life conference in Cleveland, one of the biggest in the country. And I was making my rounds, walking around, seeing if I could promote it to any of the other tables that were there. And I saw these two guys who had beards, like these two, really smart looking guys with glasses and beards, which for those unaware, that's that is the definite marker of a Chesterton headmaster. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what's going on with them? They seem really, they're having a really lively discussion. And then I saw a stack of books on the table, and I saw, okay, wait a minute, Dante, Virgil, Homer, this looks awesome. I need to go talk to these guys. And then I asked them, what are you? What do you do? I see Chesterton Academy, and they said, well, we're a classical academy in Akron, Ohio, so about 30 minutes south of Cleveland. And I just asked, what's a classical academy? And they explained to me that it's this amazing method of education that helps build up people through this tried and true method, through introducing them to great works, to instilling the sense of wonder in them, just building up every single part of the person. And I just thought, this is what I've been missing. Like, I loved going around and giving these talks to people and helping introduce kids to their worth and their dignity. But imagine if I get to do that every day, and kids get to receive that formation daily with what is proven to uplift man for centuries. And then, I knew it was time to move on and move back home. And I heard about this not long at all after I moved back home. So God just put it into my lap. It could not have worked out more perfectly. It was nothing short of divine providence.
Well, that's terrific. We are coming up to 2 hours. Is there anyone else who really would like to get a word in? Maybe our friend on the iPhone there, maybe in your car. You want to introduce yourself? Say hello.
Hi. Maybe you mean me?
Yeah, I didn't mean
I'm
you.
sitting in a parking lot outside of a swimming pool now, but
Hi,
My
Lisa.
name
Hi, Lisa.
hi, my name is Lisa. But I have another friend who was on, I think she just hopped off, Gina Borchers. She was not Keith Borchers, Gina Borchers, but for about 1.5 years, we were actually meeting almost weekly with somebody else, trying to think of starting a school here where we live in the Bay Area, but really far from San Francisco, really far from Dixon, and it just didn't work out. There was no set curriculum. I think that's what I like about the idea of the Chesterton model. It's set. You have something to refer to, especially if you're trying to attract people or talk to them about what you're doing. You're like, that's the curriculum, look, or this is where we're going. I think that's the really lovely thing about it. I don't know what's possible here. I think there's so many people still here in my area, like San Francisco. I just was telling my daughter who was running into the pool, hey, you can hop on BART every day and go to Star of the Sea. And she's like, oh my gosh, like it's still pretty far, guys. That's
yeah.
So I
That's
don't
true.
know what would be able to be possible here. I think a lot of people are talking about it, but I don't know who they all are. I think that's the thing. I think Gina and I need to look around and see. I don't know. I think there are other people out here thinking of it.
I think Oakland, isn't there Oakland?
So I
Anyway.
heard of somebody who was trying to do something in Oakland, but specifically not Chesterton, like maybe
Okay.
through the diocese and specifically not Chesterton. So, okay, so that's, I don't know, guys, if you
We'll
hear
follow
anything.
up with you. I'm not sure. We'll follow up.
Yeah.
Follow up with you, Lisa.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
the other thing I could say is that in my experience, a lot of good things start with a list, right? So if you just take it, you've got a list of 2, and there are others out there. And if you just begin to collect the names of the other people and say hello to them, and before you know it, you'll have a community, and maybe you can meet and pray together a novena about starting a school and see what God has in store. But thank you.
I guess I just wanted to say this quickly. Obviously, you who know me know I'm getting near the end of the children. I have 3 left that I'm homeschooling out of 10. So heading down the end of the line, kind of. But so many people have left the Bay Area for so many reasons, right? Not just COVID, not just because it's way too expensive, but because they didn't trust their kids to go to high school here. Some of you know we have a good friend whose children are Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they live here in the Bay. I'm like, people are doing anything to try to get to a good school. So I would really just recommend, like, we just keep trying, even if not for ourselves, but for our friends and the other people we know. Right.
Lisa, you may have just been nominated to start the Chesterton over there in the Concord area.
Oh, what was Gina mean? With others,
God
there
is
are
calling
others.
you because we can use them everywhere from Concord.
Wait, guys, and then I'm telling you, you who know me, like my children are moving out of state. It's too expensive, right? But they're finding the we need them everywhere. So when our children flee and flee and go to other parts of the country, they're going to bump into Chesterton academies out there too.
Great.
And you guys already have an incredible network of homeschooling over there. So it really just takes a handful of people to get together in alignment and the rest can happen. So.
And the other thing is, obviously we're a homeschooling family, but when kids get to high school, they really do, they would look forward to going to a high school. It's a good fit. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna.
You have to go to the pool. Okay.
The
Thank
poor
you.
people are back in the car.
All right, good. Nice. Thank you for that. Well, my friends, I appreciate all your help and I appreciate mostly what you're all doing for the children and your faith and our faith. And this is not a conversation that can be over because the need is so great and the need to form souls that see the truth and the goodness and the beauty of reality, really, amid the ugliness of so much, the stain of so much. You know, we're fostering mental illness in our children. Like, you know, I don't know if you just saw the study saying half of teenage girls feel extremely sad and lonely. It's not normal. It's not good. But here we have people coming together to protect and raise up the next generation. And that's beautiful and inspiring. So we appreciate you very much. Till the
Thank you,
next time.
Maggie. Maggie, you have been very key to our start. So I want to thank you for that. Very, very key. She's very humble. It would not be happening, I don't think, without Maggie making some initial contacts and making some things happen. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
well, thank you.
Maggie.
Take care.
Thank
My
you all. This
friends.
is amazing. It's very encouraging to see all of you guys here throughout the country. It's a lot later for a lot of you guys. So have a good evening.
Good evening. God bless everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.